1 Edward 1029, copy, threatening traffic.
Copy, moving route.
Edward 1029, if you could please respond to 2020 McNeil Street, Lakeview.
Copy. If you still have roll on, get the ATO information first.
Hi, I'm Brad Carlyon, the Navajo County Attorney, and thank you for joining us for Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey. Sheriff Clark can't join us today, but we do have two wonderful guests from Alice's Place, the domestic violence shelter in Winslow, Arizona. We have Teresa, the Executive Director, and Greg, the President of the Board for Alice's Place.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Well, tell us a little more what Alice's Place is, what they do, and who they serve.
I get to answer that one because Alice's Place has been around since about 2000. It came about with a doctor in town, a pediatrician, who saw the need, because of a needs assessment that was done with Navajo County, that we needed more beds in Navajo County for domestic violence and shelter. And so he started working. He formed a corporation, a nonprofit, and formed a board, and I happened to be one of those initial board members. And we worked and struggled. We didn't have much money, of course that's always a problem, and we were able to attain a STOP grant at one time, and then we had a very generous donor that got us going. Then in about 2005,
2008 is when I came on as director.
I was able to hire Teresa as a director, and at that time then things started working. We were able to fund enough money to buy a thrift store, and that helps with our income, as well as now we have a safe house. So it's come a long way. It's taken 15 years, but I think that Alice's Place really serves a real need.
How did you come up with the name Alice's Place?
The physician that Greg referred to, his name is Dr. Ogilvie, and Alice was actually his grandmother. And she grew up experiencing family and domestic violence and has a great survival story. So when the corporation was formed, Alice's was the namesake. When we opened our shelter, which gives a 90-day stay in December of 2011, because prior to then we did sheltering through motel vouchers, and we eventually had an apartment that was donated to us that we could utilize, but it was limited. When we opened our 90-day shelter to also honor another community member, Laura Kislingberry, we opened Laura's House. And Laura Kislingberry is, the Kislingberries is a family from Winslow. And in December of 1981, she was shot and murdered by her husband. And it was a very horrific incident in Winslow. So we're able to now honor both Dr. Ogilvie's grandmother, Alice, and our friend, Laura.
And then you're based out of Winslow, but is that the only area that you serve?
Oh, no. I usually tell people in domestic violence there are no boundaries as far as city, county, state. We have people that come in from, the majority of the individuals that come into shelter are from the northern half of the state, but we have individuals who have come in from several states throughout the United States. And in different areas, we get a lot of calls from Maricopa County, actually. They go through times where there's not a lot of availability as far as beds there, or there's individuals that are trying to leave the area that they're in because it's dangerous. They're being stalked, etc. So they're trying to find something in a different community. And the same with us. We have individuals from our area that they're just simply not safe to stay in shelter with us. So we help them to get into shelters in different areas of the state where they will have a better chance of being safe.
And Brad, one of the great things about our organization is we have transportation. So we're able to reach out, and we've gone as far as Colorado, or into New Mexico, to be able to either pick someone up or take someone where we need to take them to get to safety.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, April is National Victim Rights Month, and oftentimes victims of domestic violence are talked about as living a life in secrecy because they don't want to share what's going on, and sometimes they get in more trouble if they do by the aggressor in the relationship. What does Alice's Place do to help educate the community and make these victims feel comfortable about coming forward and getting the help that you offer?
Outreach is definitely something that we're involved in. We have a case manager and a victim advocate. They will take our brochures, drop them off to a lot of places that people just happen to go through, the medical centers. We put flyers in the bathrooms, little tearaway flyers is what we call, with our numbers on them, anywhere that we're allowed to put them up. We do hold awareness events. We will go and speak to different clubs, different employers. When there's, whether it's a county level, city level, when there's MPC will have their work fairs, etc. We're usually there. We have Hospital Week coming up in May, so we'll have a table there. And so we're trying to get our information out there. You are very right in the sense of being anonymous. And when I first came in 2008, at that time, we were kind of running services in a shared area of a counseling center that also did counseling for the batterers. So it wasn't a very good situation, but it's what we had available at the time. So one of the first things we did was we found our own location, and it was this great little house across the street from the Chamber of Commerce in Winslow, and had our sign up there. We were so proud of it, had it decorated, it was great. Opened it up, and there was just two of us at the time, our case manager Dee Dee and I, and we got lots of phone calls, rarely anyone come in. And one afternoon we were a little slow, and we called a friend of ours and asked her if she wanted to come and hang out. And her response was basically, no, I'm not going to go over there. If somebody see me walk in, they're going to think my husband is doing something. And it was like, duh. And we realized that we had to change something very quickly. And it was around the same time that Goodwill moved out of our area. So it left that gap in Winslow anyway, of having that thrift store. And Dr. Hackler and his wife found the VFW building, which is where we're at right now. We created our thrift store, and we put our offices in the back of that building. So now when people are driving by and they're seeing, we get lots of shoppers on a daily basis. So people coming in and out all the time, no one's going to know who's coming in to see us, who's going in to shop. So it does create a much better way of reaching us anonymously.
I think the other thing we just talked about is education, you know, and that's what we're doing here, and that's why we appreciate you having us here today to talk. You would be surprised the place where we've gone into churches or into a workplace, a large workplace in this county, where then people will approach us afterwards and say, I know someone, what can I do? You know, so I think education is the key.
Well, let's use that as a segue. So say somebody says, I know someone, what can you do to reach out, or can you reach out to that someone, or you just have to wait for them to come to you?
Yeah, that's a good question, and the answer is probably not what we'd like to say, but no, we can't reach out to them until they can reach out to us, and it is because of the danger factor.
But we can encourage that person who knows that person to say, here's the card, here's this, it's very confidential, we can get you there, we can get you the help. And the numbers are shocking.
And if their friends or their family take literature, we do caution them not to leave it in the home of the victim, because that can cause danger. And it could link them to us, and if they were to come to us for help, we certainly don't want the abuser to know where they're going. But once they will come to us, we can take it from there, and everything is very confidential, but reaching out to them through a phone call, through approaching them, especially at a home, that's just not something that's in their best interest.
So when finally somebody gets up, whatever it takes for them to reach out to you, what services do you provide to them? You talked about the shelter, but I assume there's a lot more you provide.
Oh, absolutely. We have both residential and non-residential services. Shelter is definitely something we have. It's a 90-day stay and everything that goes with that. But on the non-residential side, we can offer transportation, like what we talked about, crisis intervention. We do 24-hour phone calls, a phone line that we have that they can reach us, and we have a person covering that 24/7, holidays, weekends. There's always someone to answer a phone. The transportation, I know we keep bringing that up, but it really is a key thing for us. In Winslow specifically, we don't have Greyhound that stops in our city anymore. We don't have public transportation. So the ability to go out to the areas, the rural areas, to pick these individuals up and bring them in is very crucial. It makes the difference between whether they can get services or not. We do lay legal advocacy. I have to say that because we are not legal advocates, but we do court accompaniment. You guys have seen us there. We help with taking them to court to get orders of protection. We'll help them with victim statements. Whether it's criminal or civil, we're there. And sometimes all they're really needing is just someone who believes in them that's sitting next to them in court. We do educational. We offer financial management workshops, workplace and work skill workshops, where we can help them do resumes and learn how to do a good interview, help them with applications. We definitely help them navigate all the social service systems there are, DES, CPS CPS if they're involved, and I know it's a different name now, child support, parenting classes if that's what they want. We do group support sessions as well. We have a specific DV education curriculum that's actually really good. It runs 7 weeks. There's twice a week, and this is a real big part of our education. In shelter, we do children's support groups.
Oh, good, because too often people don't recognize the children, if they're not beat or battered themselves, aren't victims, but by just witnessing what's going on in the home, they can be traumatized themselves.
Yeah, all too often, the mothers that come in, and I will say that we definitely have and have helped male victims of domestic violence. I'll get into that in a minute. But in Laura's house, it's women and minor children. And all too often we do hear that from the parent. Oh, they don't know what's going on. I was able to keep, and we know that's not true. Children are very smart from a very early age. And so we always encourage counseling, and there's some very good trauma-informed counseling at the different places in Winslow, and we do encourage both the adults and the children to go in. And yeah, the children support groups that we do are very well received. Male victims of domestic violence, I think, is a very underserved population. I think there's a lot more of it going on out there than what's being reported. But when we do get a call, it's not very often, but when we do get a call, we take that very seriously. And we do have clients that are male, some with children, some without. We've had one, we call it a safe room. It's actually an apartment that is donated to us very graciously. And it gives us the ability to put a family in there, a male victim, someone who may have a hard time assimilating into a group shelter. So we do have alternatives like that.
For those of us that aren't in a domestic violence situation, but we think that maybe a friend is, what are some of the signs that might be visible that would help us understand what's going on in that other household and maybe be able to reach out to that other person?
Obviously physical signs, bruising that's not explainable.
They always have a good excuse.
Yeah.
There's always a good excuse, but when it's on a consistent basis, there's usually something more behind that. But other than the physical signs, there's going to be isolation. That's a really big one. If they're withdrawing from family, withdrawing from friends, quitting a job, or not hanging out with friends that they used to hang out with at a job.
Or not having access to a checkbook simply, that's been taken away from their financial portion, independence, yeah.
But it's very typical in a domestic violence situation where the partner is doing the isolating, and it's a form of control. The way that, when you see the way that they interact, I think you can usually tell differences. In the beginning of a relationship, it's wonderful. It's, the honeymoon phase, and then things start to deteriorate from there. And if you suspect it, and maybe nothing's going on, it could be something different, but even if you suspect it, to just simply let them know. I think one of the most important things is to tell them, I believe that something's going on, I believe you. That's what they need. They need to know that they're being believed, because most of them are going to say, if I say something, no one's going to believe me. And we have to, as advocates, we have to believe what they're saying, because that is their reality, and we go according to that. And family needs to do the same thing. I think it's too common for families to say, he's such a nice guy, he would never do that. Or, she's such a great person, she'd never do that. But those are the stories that you usually see on TV that have the worst outcomes.
About how many people do you help every year?
Through our hotline, we get approximately 200 to 250 calls a year. We actually intake into the program, we have on average about 180. That would include the adults and the children, residential, non-residential. Some individuals we work with literally for a matter of hours. It could be a crisis intervention where we're presented the issue, and then we start helping them right away. Where do we go from here? We safety plan. We help them get out of the area if that's what they need to do. It's not uncommon for us to be at the emergency room. We have gone several times out in the middle of the night, usually, to actually a police request to a home. As long as it's been secured, they call us out, we go out there, pick the person up, do whatever we have to do. There's 2 hospitals in town, and they know us well. And but most of the time, the calls that are coming in are directly from the person needing help.
And even for someone like me involved in the criminal justice system, the numbers you just talked about are still mind-numbing for such a small county that we have, and you're just mainly serving the northern part of the county.
Yeah. So, the calls that come in, we always say that we never turn anyone away, but what that means is we don't always bring them into shelter, but we always have something we can offer them, where they can go, who else they can call. Because believe it or not, on our website, we're Alice's Place A, so somebody in Florida who looked us up on the internet may be calling Alice's Place from Florida. Right. So then we have to make sure that they can get where they need to go. The real thing about our business is sometimes you don't know what happens to that person after we've helped them, And there have been times that we've been able to know, one that just really tugs at my heartstrings, when a little boy was tugging on Teresa's pants and saying, "Thank you for helping my mother, get out of trouble." And we found out that, and we had to do what we call the Alice's Underground Railroad, where she only used cash. She made it all the way to her destination, and she was able to contact us and let us know that she made it safely. And
our role with this particular case was to help her set up the next couple of stops with other domestic violence programs. And then you start a chain of events, and she goes to this one, and then they help her get to the next one, and they help her get to the next one. And what could, for anyone else, take a day or two drive to get to, might take her a couple of weeks because she's waiting for a bed opening to the next destination. And the reason for that, in some cases where stalking is a real issue and a danger to the person, we're trying to help them not leave a paper trail. So we don't want names on motels, we don't want credit cards being used. So it's phenomenal, the help that you can get from other DV shelters.
Yes.
There's when you're doing something like that, there's such a reception from the different, what I would call a peer. Peers of other organizations like us.
Besides your thrift store, what is your and grants? What are your other funding sources to help you keep your doors open and serve these people in need?
Well, as a nonprofit, you were supposed to, I don't know if anybody knows about nonprofits, sort of have things sectioned out. So you have grants, and you have philanthropic giving, and then you have fundraisers. So if some money goes away somewhere, you're not left in the lurch.
Diversified funding sources, that's been one of our big goals. And by far our #1 biggest supporter is the Navajo Nation. And we're very grateful to them. And not because of that, but it just so happens, because of our location, we're just bordered to the Navajo Reservation. It's probably 80 to 90% Navajo individuals in shelter with us, and an overall 60% in our program. They've been a great supporter of ours, but in addition to that, we do receive funding through the state, the Department of Economic Security. We just recently, very proud of this, we just recently were granted a STOP grant through the Governor's Office of Family and Youth, and that gave us a full-time victim advocate and a part-time crisis hotline advocate. A lot of people don't realize that for the past 7 years since our case manager, Dee Dee, and I have started this, redesigned this in 2008, it's really been her and I on phones 24 hours a day for 7 years. We alternate weekends, so you can imagine how many hours we're putting in. So to have a third person in that rotation, she's taking 2 weekends a month, and then our victim advocate is taking 1 night a week. And it pretty much cuts our time in half.
That's
and
wonderful.
a much needed respite from that.
Do you have any fundraisers coming up?
We have just decided, we do this thing called an Ask Alice event. It's a 1-hour breakfast that we do. We have speakers that are there, and we basically, it's what it is. We ask for money, we ask from the community, and we have been doing this about every other year. They've been very successful, and I think we're going to be doing that this probably October.
Well, we were fortunate enough to have Brad as one of our speakers at our Ask Alice.
And I appreciated that.
And what we do is we say, bring your checkbook, because we're going to ask you for money. Give you a donut and an apple for breakfast, and give us a lot of money.
And that's a simple thing. Now, of course, we do other things. We just had a concert, Halpin and Bettman. They were just wonderful. And we used to do a thing called the Alice's Guy pageant. We haven't done that in about 3 years. That was super phenomenal.
We might bring that back. You know, we were looking for more contestants, Brad, so we were hoping that you could. It does involve a swimsuit and an evening gown.
I'll have to get on my diet.
Okay.
And I apologize, but the time has flown by and we're out of time. But thank you both so very much
Thank you,
for
Brad.
sharing this information about Alice's Place. And thank you for joining us for this segment of Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey. And we look forward to joining you next month with some new guests.